The next 8 weeks became a blur of piano keys and coffee-stained sheet music and exhaustion so deep, Maya sometimes forgot what day it was. She'd talked to Tom the day after meeting with Dr. Winters, and he'd been more supportive than she could have imagined. He cut her shifts down to 3 days a week, the bare minimum she needed to cover rent and food. "You'd better invite me to this showcase," he'd said with a grin. "I want to see my star waitress become an actual star." The stipend from Silverstone Hall helped, but money was still tight. Maya learned to get creative. Instant noodles for dinner most nights, walking instead of taking the bus when she could. Skipping things that weren't essential. It wasn't fun, but she'd survived on less before. Dr. Winters had connected her with a retired Juilliard professor named Raymond Chen. No relation, though he'd joked about it at their first meeting. He was 74, sharp as anything, and had no patience for excuses. "You have talent," he'd told her during their first session. "Raw, undisciplined talent that's been hiding under a rock for 3 years. We're going to polish it until it shines." They met 3 times a week at his home studio, a converted garage filled with 2 grand pianos and enough sheet music to stock a library. He pushed her hard, made her play passages over and over until they were perfect, corrected her posture, her breathing, the angle of her wrists. "You're tensing up," he'd say, tapping her shoulder. "Music doesn't flow through tension. Relax, trust your hands. They remember more than you think." And they did remember. Some days it felt like magic. The way her fingers found complicated passages she hadn't played in years. Other days felt like starting from scratch, like she'd never played piano at all. Those were the hard days. The days when she'd leave Professor Chen's studio feeling defeated and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. She practiced at home too, on her cheap keyboard, sometimes until 2 in the morning. Her neighbor banged on the wall most nights, yelling at her to keep it down. She bought him a box of cookies and apologized, promised to use headphones after 10. He'd grumbled but accepted. The program was coming together slowly. She'd chosen a Mozart sonata that showcased her classical training, a piece by George Gershwin that let her play with jazz elements, and she was expanding that original composition from the cafe, turning it into something longer, more complete. That piece was the hardest to work on. It required her to go back to all those emotions she'd buried. The grief over her mother, the guilt about leaving Juilliard, the anger at circumstances that had stolen her future, the loneliness of working at the cafe, invisible and forgotten. "This piece," Professor Chen had said after hearing her play through an early version, "this is your story. Don't shy away from it. Lean into it. Let people hear what you've lived through." So she did. She let herself feel everything while she played. Stopped trying to keep the emotions at a safe distance. It was exhausting. Some practice sessions left her crying, her hands shaking too hard to continue. But the piece was becoming something powerful, something honest. Jessica and the other cafe workers followed her progress on social media. The video from the fundraiser kept getting shared, had hit over 50,000 views now. People started recognizing Maya at the cafe, asking when they could hear her play again. Tom had moved the piano to a better spot and added a sign. "Sunday piano performances by Maya Chen, 2-4 p.m. She'd started playing short sets on Sunday afternoons during her shifts. Nothing fancy, just an hour or 2 of background music. But people came specifically for it. The cafe was packed every Sunday now. Her father called one evening about 3 weeks into her preparation. They didn't talk often. He'd moved to Arizona after her mother died, trying to escape the memories. They had a cordial relationship, but it was thin, careful, built on avoiding topics that hurt too much. "Tom's wife is friends with my neighbor," her father said. "She told her about what you're doing. About this showcase." "Oh, yeah, it's coming up in a few weeks." "Maya, why didn't you tell me?" "I don't know. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it." Her father was quiet for a moment. "Your mother would be so proud. You know that, right?" Maya's throat tightened. "I hope so. She made you promise to keep playing. I remember that conversation. I remember too. I should have pushed you to go back. After, when things settled down, I should have encouraged you instead of just, I don't know. I was lost. I let you sacrifice too much. Dad, don't. You were grieving. We both were. I made my own choices. Maybe. But I could have made it easier for you to choose differently." He cleared his throat. "I'm coming to the showcase. Already booked my flight. I want to be there. Maya felt tears starting. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I need to see this, Maya. I need to see you do what you were always meant to do. The weeks kept passing. 4 weeks left. 3 weeks. 2 weeks. The showcase was becoming real, moving from abstract concept to actual event with a date and time and people who'd paid for tickets. Maya's anxiety ramped up. She'd wake in the middle of the night, convinced she'd forgotten how to play. She'd practice pieces she could play perfectly, and find mistakes she swore weren't there before. Professor Chen called it performance anxiety and told her it was normal. Every great musician feels this way before important performances, he assured her. The fear means you care. Just don't let it control you. Easier said than done 1 week before the showcase. Professor Chen had her play through her entire program start to finish. No stops, as if it were the actual performance. She made mistakes. Hit a wrong note in the Mozart. Rushed through a passage in the Gershwin. Almost fell apart completely in her original piece when her emotions got the better of her. When she finished, she felt like she'd failed. Like there was no way she'd be ready in a week. Professor Chen just smiled. That was good. I messed up like 5 times, 6 actually. I counted. He stood and walked to where she sat at the piano. But you kept going. You didn't stop. You didn't let the mistakes derail you. That's what matters in a live performance. Not perfection, resilience. What if I freeze up? What if I get out there and can't play at all? Then you'll sit at the piano looking terrified until your muscle memory kicks in and reminds you that you know how to do this. He patted her shoulder. You're ready, Maya, more ready than you think. Trust yourself. The night before the showcase, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through her program in her head. She thought about everyone who'd be there. Dr. Winters, Tom and Jessica and the other cafe workers, her father flying in from Arizona, music industry people she didn't know, critics, journalists, people who'd judge her, who'd decide if she was good enough, if she deserved this second chance. She got up at 3 a.m. and sat at her keyboard. Didn't turn it on, just sat there with her fingers resting on the keys. She thought about her 17-year-old self, so confident and fearless. She thought about the version of herself at 20, who'd made the impossible choice between her dream and her family. She thought about the Maya who'd served coffee for 3 years, hiding from her own life. And she thought about who she wanted to be going forward. Not fearless, she'd never be fearless again. Had learned too much about how quickly everything could fall apart. But maybe brave, maybe willing to try even when she was scared. She played one chord in the darkness of her apartment, let it resonate. Then another, and another. Not practicing, just playing. Just existing in that space where music lived. The showcase was at 7 p.m. Maya arrived at Silverstone Hall at 4, when Dr. Winters had told her to come for sound check and final preparation. The building was beautiful, all marble and high ceilings and the kind of elegance that made her feel small. The performance space was more intimate than she'd expected. 200 seats arranged in a semicircle around a gorgeous black grand piano that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Stage lights hung from the ceiling, currently off, making the space feel quiet and expectant. How are you feeling? Dr. Winters asked, appearing beside her. Terrified? Good. Use that. Channel it into your playing. Dr. Winters gestured to the piano. Go ahead. Get a feel for it. You have the stage for the next hour. Maya walked up to the piano slowly, like approaching something sacred. She sat on the bench and adjusted it. Placed her hands on the keys. They were perfectly weighted, responsive in a way her keyboard could never be. She played a few scales, some arpeggios, started into the Mozart just to hear how it sounded in this space. The acoustics were incredible. Every note rang clear and pure, filling the hall without any amplification. Professor Chen appeared and listened while she played through parts of her program. He'd make suggestions. Open up more in that passage. Let it breathe. Too fast there. Take your time. Beautiful. That's exactly right. By 6 o'clock, Maya was in a private room backstage wearing the one nice dress she owned. Black simple, bought at a thrift store specifically for this. Jessica had helped her with makeup, insisting that stage lights would wash her out if she didn't wear more than usual. She could hear people arriving. The murmur of voices, the sound of seats filling up. Her hands were shaking again. She tried the breathing exercises Professor Chen had taught her. They helped a little. Tom appeared at her door. "Hey, you look great. How you doing?" "I'm okay, nervous. You're going to kill it." He held up his phone. "Jessica's saving seats for all of us. Your dad got here about 20 minutes ago. He looks really proud." Maya felt her eyes get wet. "Don't make me cry." "My makeup? Right, sorry." Tom grinned. "I just wanted to tell you whatever happens tonight, you've already done something amazing. You took a chance. You tried. That takes guts." At 7 p.m., the lights dimmed. Maya stood in the wings watching the other rising voices performer finish her set. A violinist mid-40s playing with passion and skill. The audience clapped enthusiastically when she finished. Then it was Maya's turn. Dr. Winters walked onto the stage to introduce her. "Our final performer tonight comes to us from an unexpected place. 3 months ago, she was serving coffee at a local cafe. Then one afternoon, she sat down at an old piano and reminded everyone in that room why music matters. Please welcome Maya Chen." Maya walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, making it hard to see faces in the audience. She could sense them, though. 200 people waiting to hear if she was worth their time. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench even though it didn't need adjusting, looked at the keys. They seemed to glow under the stage lights. For one horrible second, her mind went blank. She couldn't remember what she was supposed to play first. Couldn't remember anything. Pure panic. Then her hands moved. Muscle memory, just like Professor Chen had said. They found the opening notes of the Mozart sonata and suddenly she was playing. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else. Energy, focus, presence. She moved through the Mozart with precision and feeling. Let herself play with the jazzy freedom of Gershwin, and then finally her original piece, the one that told her story. She didn't hold back. Let every emotion flow through her fingers. The grief and guilt and loneliness and hope and determination. All of it, everything she'd lived through. Everything she'd survived. Some people in the audience were crying. She could see them now, her eyes adjusting to the lights. She saw her father in the third row, tears streaming down his face. Saw Tom and Jessica and her cafe co-workers. Saw strangers moved by her music, by her story told in notes instead of words. The final chord faded into silence. That moment before the applause where anything is possible. And then the room erupted. People were standing, clapping, some of them shouting. Maya stood and bowed, her legs shaky, her heart racing. She'd done it. Had actually done it. The weeks after the showcase moved fast. Offers started coming in. A teaching position at a music academy with good pay and flexible hours. Session work for a film composer who'd been in the audience. An invitation to record an album of original compositions. Maya accepted the teaching position. The stability felt important after years of financial uncertainty. But she kept one shift at Rosewood Cafe Sunday mornings, playing piano for the customers who'd supported her before anyone else knew her name. Tom had made the piano performances a permanent fixture, added them to the cafe's marketing. Maya didn't mind. It felt right, coming back to where everything had started. 6 months after the showcase, Maya was in a recording studio working on her first album. Professor Chen had agreed to help produce it. The album would be a mix of classical pieces and her original compositions. Music that told her story, and maybe helped other people tell theirs. She thought about her mother sometimes, wondering if she could see this. If she knew Maya had finally kept her promise. Not in the timeline she'd imagined. Not in the way she'd expected. But she'd kept it. She thought about the version of herself who'd been too scared to even look at the cafe piano. Who'd convinced herself that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. Who'd spent 3 years invisible, hiding from her own potential. That version of herself wasn't wrong. Life was hard. Circumstances were real. Sometimes you had to make impossible choices between dreams and survival. But maybe if you were lucky, if you were brave enough, you got a second chance. Maybe you got to rediscover the parts of yourself you'd thought were lost forever. And maybe the most extraordinary thing wasn't the talent itself, but the courage to let people see it again, to risk failure and judgment and disappointment for the chance to be fully, completely alive. Maya finished the recording session and packed up her things. Professor Chen walked her out, complaining good-naturedly about her interpretation of a particular passage while also admitting it was brilliant. "You know," he said as they reached the parking lot, When Dr. Winters first told me about you, I thought you'd be good. But you're better than good, Maya. You're the real thing. I'm just someone who plays piano. No, you're someone who lived a life, who survived things that would have broken other people, and who turned all of that into art. That's not common. That's rare, he smiled. Keep playing. Keep growing. And don't wait another 3 years to let the world hear what you can do. Maya drove home as the sun set, turning the sky orange and pink. She thought about the showcase, about her father crying in the audience, about the offers and opportunities that had followed. But mostly she thought about that Thursday afternoon at the cafe when she'd made a choice. When she'd been too scared to breathe but had said, I can play anyway. When she'd decided that hiding wasn't the same as safety, that surviving wasn't the same as living. That was the moment everything changed. Not the showcase, not the viral video or the teaching position or the record deal. The moment when she'd chosen to be seen again, chosen to risk everything for the chance to be herself. She pulled into her apartment complex and grabbed her bag. Tomorrow she had a full day. Teaching in the morning, recording session in the afternoon, Sunday shift at the cafe. A life that was full and messy and complicated in hers. No one had expected the waitress to achieve this. But that was okay. Maya hadn't expected it either. She'd just showed up, made a choice, and played the music she'd been keeping inside for too long. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just one moment of courage. One decision to stop hiding. One chance to let the world hear who you really are. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the world actually listens. Maya sat on her apartment floor that night, staring at Dr. Winters' business card like it might suddenly explain everything. The card sat on her coffee table, which was really just an old milk crate with a board across it. Next to the card was her phone, which hadn't stopped buzzing since she got home. Text messages from co-workers. A Facebook friend request from someone who'd been at the fundraiser. Notifications that people were tagging her in the video Jessica had posted. The video that now had over 3,000 views and was still climbing. She didn't want to look at it. Didn't want to read the comments. But she couldn't help herself. She picked up her phone and opened the video. There she was, hunched over the cafe piano, her fingers moving across the keys. The camera shook a little because Jessica had been holding it, probably trying not to drop it while also recording. But the audio was clear, crystal clear, and Maya could hear what everyone else had heard. It sounded good, better than good. It sounded like something real. The comments had multiplied. Hundreds of them now. This is the most beautiful thing I've heard in months. Why is she working as a waitress? Someone get this girl a record deal. The emotion in this playing. I felt every note. Where can I find more of her music? Maya closed the app, put her phone face down on the couch, stood up and paced her small apartment, which took about 6 steps to cross from one end to the other. Dr. Winters had called while Maya was on the bus home. She'd left a voicemail. Maya had listened to it 3 times now. Hello, Maya, this is Dr. Helen Winters. We met today at the fundraiser. I wanted to follow up with you about a potential opportunity. I know this is probably overwhelming, so no pressure, but I'd love to meet for coffee tomorrow if you're available. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Call me back when you have a chance. The voicemail had been polite, professional, the tone of someone who was used to making offers that people accepted. Maya should call her back, should say yes to coffee, should at least hear what the opportunity was. But instead, she'd been sitting in her apartment for 2 hours, paralyzed. Because hearing about an opportunity meant making decisions. And making decisions meant facing all the questions she'd been avoiding for 3 years. Her keyboard sat by the window, exactly where it always was. She walked over to it and sat down, placed her fingers on the keys but didn't press them. Just rested them there, feeling the cool plastic under her skin. She thought about her parents. Her mom specifically, how proud she'd been when Maya got accepted to Juilliard, how she'd cried happy tears and called everyone she knew, how she'd told Maya this was just the beginning, that she was going to do amazing things. Maya's chest tightened. She pressed down on the keys, playing a single chord. It resonated in her small apartment, filling the space with sound before fading back to silence. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Tom. Hey, she answered. Hey. Sorry to bother you after your shift. I just wanted to check in. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Just processing everything. That makes 2 of us. Tom laughed, but it was a gentle sound. Listen, I don't know what's going on with you. Why you're working at the cafe when you can play like that. And you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But Maya, that was something special today. You know that, right? I guess. Not I guess, it was. I've been running this cafe for 8 years. I've seen a lot of musicians come through, playing at open mic nights trying to get discovered. None of them had what you have. Maya didn't know what to say to that. Dr. Winters called me, Tom continued. Asked for your contact info. I gave her your number, hope that's okay. She seemed really impressed. She left me a voicemail. Are you going to call her back? I don't know. Tom was quiet for a moment. You should. Whatever happened before, whatever made you stop performing, it doesn't have to define what happens next. You proved that today. After they hung up, Maya sat at her keyboard for a long time without playing anything, just thinking, remembering. She remembered being 17, playing at a competition in New York. The way her hands had shaken before she started, and how all the fear had disappeared the moment she touched the keys. She remembered the judges' faces as they listened. The score they'd given her. First place. A full scholarship to Juilliard. Her whole future spreading out in front of her like a highway with no end. She remembered the call from her father 9 months later. The way his voice had cracked when he said cancer. Advanced stage. Aggressive treatment needed. Insurance wouldn't cover everything. She remembered withdrawing from Juilliard. The advisor who'd tried to convince her to take a leave of absence instead, to come back when things settled. But Maya had known things wouldn't settle. Had known her family needed her now, needed money now, needed her to be practical instead of pursuing dreams that felt selfish in the face of her mother's illness. She remembered the last conversation with her mother before she died. How weak her voice had been. How she'd held Maya's hand and said, "Promise me you'll go back. Promise me you'll keep playing," Maya had promised. Had meant it when she said it. But then there was her father, lost and grieving and buried in medical debt. There were bills to pay. There was surviving to do, and somewhere along the way, the promise had gotten buried under the weight of everything else, under the exhaustion, under the daily grind of working and paying rent and making sure her father had help paying off his debts. Going back to Juilliard had started to feel impossible. Then unlikely, then like something that belonged to a different version of herself that no longer existed. She'd convinced herself it was fine, that some dreams were meant to stay dreams, that she could be happy with her keyboard and her quiet apartment and her invisible life at the cafe. But today had cracked something open, had reminded her that she wasn't just someone who used to play. She was someone who could still play, who maybe needed to play. Maya finally picked up her phone and called Dr. Winters back. Maya, hello, thank you for calling. Dr. Winters sounded genuinely pleased. I'm so glad to hear from you. Are you free tomorrow around 10? There's a cafe near Silverstone Hall. Well, not a competitor to your workplace, I promise. Maya laughed despite herself. Yes, 10 works. Wonderful. I'll text you the address. And Maya, get some rest tonight. You did something remarkable today. The cafe where they met was the kind of place that charged $8 for coffee and had succulents on every table. Maya arrived 15 minutes early because she was always early for everything. Dr. Winters arrived exactly on time. She was wearing a different suit today, charcoal gray, equally expensive looking. She ordered a cappuccino and waved away Maya's attempt to pay for her own coffee. Thank you for meeting me, Dr. Winters said once they were settled in a corner booth. I'll get straight to the point because I respect your time. What you played yesterday was exceptional. Not just technically proficient, though you're clearly skilled. It had emotion, authenticity. That's rare. Maya wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. Thank you. I did some research on you last night. I hope you don't mind. I found your name in old competition records. Juilliard enrollment from 8 years ago, and then nothing. You disappeared from the music world. My mother got sick. I had to leave school. I'm sorry. Dr. Winters's expression softened. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, but it was the right choice at the time. Of course, family comes first. Dr. Winters took a sip of her cappuccino. So here's what I'm thinking. Silverstone Hall runs a program called Rising Voices. It's designed to showcase exceptional talent that hasn't had traditional career paths. Musicians who fell through the cracks, who gave up performing for various reasons, who deserve a second chance. Maya's heart started beating faster. We hold 4 showcase concerts a year. Each one features 3 to 5 performers. We bring in industry people, music journalists, potential patrons. The performers get a stipend to help with living expenses while they prepare, and they get exposure that can lead to opportunities. Teaching positions, recording contracts, regular performance bookings, that sounds incredible. Our next showcase is in 8 weeks. One of our scheduled performers just backed out due to a family emergency. We need someone to fill that slot. Dr. Winters leaned forward. I'd like it to be you. The words hung in the air. Maya tried to process them, tried to understand what was being offered. 8 weeks, that's not much time to prepare. No, it's not. You'd need to develop a full program, probably 30 to 40 minutes of material. A mix of classical repertoire and original compositions would be ideal. We have piano teachers who volunteer their time to help Rising Voices participants. You'd have support. I work full-time. I can barely afford my rent as it is. I don't know if I can cut my hours to practice. The stipend is $2,000. It's not a fortune, but it might help you reduce your work hours temporarily. Dr. Winters pulled out a folder from her bag. Here's all the information. Program details, expectations, what the showcase entails. Take it home. Think about it. You don't have to decide right now. Maya took the folder. It was thick, substantial, real. Why me? You must know dozens of musicians who'd be perfect for this. I know many skilled musicians, yes. But yesterday you didn't just play music. You communicated something. You made people feel something. That's the difference between a good musician and someone who has the potential to be truly great. Dr. Winters smiled. You have something special, Maya. The question is whether you're ready to let people see it again. Maya looked down at the folder in her hands. At this opportunity that felt too big, too impossible, too much like a second chance she didn't deserve. What if I'm not good enough? What if I've been out of it too long? What if you are good enough? What if this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing? Maya thought about her mother, about the promise she'd made, about the keyboard in her apartment that had heard every lonely note she'd played for 3 years, about yesterday sitting at that dusty cafe piano and remembering what it felt like to be alive. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll do it. Dr. Winters' smile widened. Excellent. I'll be in touch with the details. Welcome back, Maya. The music world missed you. Walking out of that cafe into the bright morning, Maya felt like she was stepping into a completely different life than the one she'd woken up to. The folder felt heavy in her hands, not from physical weight, but from everything it represented. Possibility, second chances, the terrifying prospect of trying again and potentially failing, but also hope, the kind she hadn't let herself feel in a very long time. The first notes came out shaky. Maya's fingers felt stiff, uncertain, like they belonged to someone else. She'd chosen something safe to start with, a piece by Debussy called Clair de Lune. She'd played it 1,000 times on her keyboard at home, but this was different. This was real. This was people listening. For the first few measures, all she could hear was her own fear, the slight squeak of the piano bench, the blood rushing in her ears, her breathing, too fast, too shallow. But then something started to shift. Her fingers remembered. Not just the notes, but the feeling. The way this piece was supposed to flow like water, like moonlight, like something gentle and inevitable. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Her breathing slowed. The shaking in her hands began to steady. The cafe had gone completely silent. The conversations that had been humming in the background disappeared. The clink of silverware stopped. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. Maya let herself sink into the music. Let it carry her away from the anxiety, from the fear of judgment, from the weight of everything this moment meant. For 3 minutes and 42 seconds, she was just playing, just existing in the space between one note and the next. When Clair de Lune ended, there was applause. Polite, appreciative applause. The kind you give to background music at a nice event. It was fine. It was what she'd expected. But then something happened that Maya hadn't planned for. Something she couldn't have planned for even if she'd wanted to. Her hands moved to a different position on the keys, a different key signature, a different rhythm. She started playing something she'd written herself years ago, on lonely nights when the silence in her apartment felt too heavy to bear. This piece had never had a name. It was just hers, something private, something that existed only in her apartment in the dark when nobody was watching and nothing was at stake. But now here it was, spilling out into this crowded cafe, into this room full of strangers and pressure and expectations. And Maya couldn't stop it. Didn't want to stop it. The music started soft, almost fragile. A simple melody that repeated each time with a little more weight, a little more complexity. She added layers, her left hand creating a foundation while her right hand wove patterns that climbed higher and higher. It was sad at first, the kind of sad that comes from losing something important, from watching opportunities slip away, from choosing survival over dreams. But then it shifted. The chords got stronger. The rhythm became more insistent. The sadness was still there, but now there was anger too, frustration. All the emotions she'd swallowed down for 3 years, all the nights she'd played alone and wondered if anyone would ever hear her again. Her fingers moved faster. The music swelled, filling every corner of the cafe. It wasn't background music anymore. It demanded attention. It demanded to be felt. She borrowed from jazz the way the greats did, taking familiar harmonic structures and twisting them, adding dissonance that resolved in unexpected ways. She pulled from classical training, her fingers navigating complicated runs that most people couldn't play without months of practice. She mixed in something modern too, chord progressions that felt contemporary, that belonged to right now instead of 50 years ago. The piece built to a climax that made her own heart race. Her hands were moving almost independently of her thoughts now, driven by muscle memory and emotion rather than conscious decision. The piano, old and dusty and forgotten, was singing. Actually singing like it had been waiting years for someone to remember it was an instrument and not just furniture. And then gradually, the storm passed. The music gentled again, not back to where it started, but to somewhere new, somewhere that acknowledged the pain but had moved through it. Come out the other side changed but not broken. The final chord hung in the air, resonating, fading slowly into silence. Maya lifted her hands from the keys. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't think. She felt hollowed out and filled up at the same time, like she'd just run a marathon or survived something dangerous. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like an hour, and then the room exploded with sound. People were standing up, actually standing, applauding so loud it echoed off the brick walls. Maya looked up, stunned, and saw faces she didn't recognize showing expressions she couldn't quite process. Some people were wiping their eyes. Some were just staring at her with their mouths open. Tom was standing near the kitchen, and he looked like someone had just explained a magic trick to him, and he still didn't believe it was real. Jessica had her phone out, held up like she'd been recording. Her eyes were huge. An older woman in an expensive-looking navy suit was making her way through the tables toward the piano. She moved with purpose, like someone used to rooms parting for her. "Excuse me," the woman said, and her voice carried authority without being loud. That was extraordinary. Up close, Maya could see the woman was maybe in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. "Thank you," Maya managed. Her voice sounded weird, too quiet, too uncertain for someone who'd just done what she'd done. "I'm Dr. Helen Winters. I'm on the board at Silverstone Concert Hall." The woman extended her hand and Maya shook it automatically. "Where did you train?" The question landed like a punch. Where did you train? Not do you have training, but where? Because what Maya had just played wasn't something you picked up from YouTube tutorials. I went to Juilliard. For a little while." Dr. Winters' eyebrows rose. "Juilliard, I see. And now you're working here?" It wasn't judgmental the way she said it. Just surprised. Confused. The natural question that came from seeing someone with that level of skill serving coffee for a living. "It's complicated," Maya said, which was both true and completely inadequate. "I'm sure it is." Dr. Winters pulled a business card from her purse and held it out. "I'd like to talk with you." "Not right now, obviously. But soon. Would that be all right?" Maya took the card. It was heavy stock, the kind that felt expensive between your fingers. Embossed lettering. Dr. Helen Winters, board member, Silverstone Concert Hall, a phone number. An email address? Okay, Maya said, because what else could she say? "Good, I'll call you tomorrow if that works." Dr. Winters smiled, and it was warm, genuine. "You have a real gift. I hope you know that." Before Maya could respond, other people were approaching. The hospital board members who the event was actually for, local business owners. The woman from the news station who Tom had been worried about impressing. Everyone wanted to know the same things. Where had she learned to play? How long had she been working at the cafe? Did she perform anywhere else? Did she teach? Was that an original composition? Maya answered as best she could, her brain still foggy, still trying to catch up to what had just happened. Yes, that was her own piece. No, she didn't perform anywhere else. Yes, she'd had formal training. No, she didn't teach. The questions kept coming. Tom appeared at some point and rescued her, steering her toward the back room while apologizing to people that Maya needed a break. What the hell was that? Tom said once they were alone. But he was smiling, actually grinning. You said you could play. You didn't say you could. I don't even know what to call that. I know. I should have been more clear about, no, that was, Maya, do you understand what just happened out there? People were crying. Actually crying. That woman from Channel 7 said it's the best thing she's heard all year. He laughed, running his hand through his hair again, but this time from excitement instead of stress. Why are you working here? I mean, obviously I'm glad you are, but how? It's a long story. Is it a story you want to tell me sometime? Maya looked at him. Tom, who'd been her boss for 3 years, who'd given her consistent shifts and never asked for much beyond showing up and doing the work, who'd let her stay invisible for all this time because that's what she'd needed, what she'd chosen. Maybe, she said. Yeah, maybe sometime. Back in the dining area, the fundraiser continued. The guests were animated now, energized. The hospital board president was giving a speech about the importance of community support, but Maya could see people were still talking about the music, still processing what they'd heard. Jessica cornered her by the coffee station. Okay, you have to explain. You've been here for 3 years. 3 years, Maya. And you never mentioned you could do that? I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think. Are you serious right now? Jessica pulled out her phone. I recorded the last half. It's already got like 200 views and I posted it 20 minutes ago. Maya felt her stomach drop. You posted it where? Just on my personal account. But people are sharing it, look. She turned the phone around and Maya saw the video, saw herself at the piano, her head bent in concentration, her hands moving across the keys. The comments underneath were filling in real time. Who is this? Why isn't she famous? This made me cry at work. Where can I hear more? Jessica, I'm not sure I want this online. Too late. Besides, this is a good thing. Look at all these comments. People love it. Maya didn't know what to say. She'd spent 3 years keeping herself small, keeping this part of her life locked away where it couldn't hurt her again. And now in less than an hour it had all spilled out. Had been recorded, shared, commented on by strangers who had opinions about her and didn't even know her name. The afternoon shift blurred by. Customers who'd been at the fundraiser kept stopping Maya to tell her how much they'd enjoyed the performance. Regular customers who'd missed it had heard about it and wanted details. Tom was fielding phone calls, including one from a local blogger who wanted to write a feature story. By the time Maya's shift ended at 4, she felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness, like she'd been running on adrenaline for hours and it was finally wearing off. She changed out of her work uniform in the back room, moving slowly. Dr. Winters' business card was in her pocket. She pulled it out and stared at it. Silverstone Concert Hall. She'd been there once years ago for a performance, had sat in the audience and dreamed about what it would be like to be on that stage. The card felt like a door, like an opportunity, like everything she'd told herself she couldn't have anymore. It also felt terrifying. Maya put the card back in her pocket and headed for the bus stop. The afternoon was bright, warm. People rushed past with their lives and plans. And Maya stood at the bus stop, waiting, feeling like she'd just stepped off a cliff and hadn't yet figured out if she was flying or falling. Thursday started like any other day. Maya's alarm went off at 5:30. The same generic beeping that had woken her every morning for 3 years. She hit snooze once, allowing herself 7 more minutes of pretending she didn't have to get up, then dragged herself to the shower. The hot water was lukewarm at best. The building's water heater had been getting fixed for 6 months now. She'd learned to shower quickly, before the temperature dropped from lukewarm to actually cold. Small adaptations. That's what her life had become. A series of small adaptations to circumstances that were never quite good enough. She caught the early bus, the one that smelled like cleaning chemicals and carried the same tired faces every morning. The man in the second row who always fell asleep and nearly missed his stop. The woman with 3 kids who juggled backpacks and lunchboxes like a circus performer. The teenager with headphones so loud everyone could hear the bass. Maya stared out the window and watched the city wake up. Street cleaners finishing their routes, bakeries turning on their lights, homeless people packing up their sleeping bags before the morning crowd could pretend not to see them. The same scenes, different day. She got to the cafe at 6:45, 15 minutes before her shift started. Tom was already there, counting register money and looking stressed about something on his computer screen. "Morning," Maya said, tying her apron. "Morning. Hey, can you check the coffee machines? Number 2 was acting weird yesterday," she checked. It was fine. But checking gave her something to do, so she didn't mind. The morning rush came in waves. First the early birds, people who bragged about being morning people as if it were a personality trait. Then the rushed crowd, grabbing coffee to go and barely making eye contact. Then the lingerers, the remote workers and retired folks who had nowhere else to be. Around 10, Tom came out of the back office looking more stressed than usual. He kept checking his phone and running his hand through what was left of his hair. Jessica noticed too. "What's up with the boss? He looks like he's about to have a breakdown." "Probably just supplier issues," Maya said, refilling a napkin dispenser. "He gets like this when orders get messed up." But it wasn't supplier issues. At 10:30, Tom gathered the staff in the back. "Okay, so, we've got a situation." He looked at his phone again as if hoping the situation would somehow resolve itself if he just checked one more time. "Remember that fundraiser event we've been planning? For the children's hospital?" Everyone nodded. It had been on the calendar for weeks. A lunch event to raise money for the pediatric wing. Local business owners and hospital board members were supposed to attend. It was supposed to be a big deal for the cafe, a chance to show they were community-minded, maybe get some good press. The pianist canceled. Car broke down on the highway. "He's stuck like 2 hours away," Jessica shrugged. "So, just play some background music from Spotify." It's not that simple. The whole thing was advertised as a live piano performance. We've got people coming specifically for that, including someone from the local news. Tom looked like he might actually be sick. This was supposed to put us on the map. Show we're not just another cafe. Maya felt something uncomfortable start in her stomach. She knew where this was going before Tom even said it. She could feel the moment approaching like a train in the distance, the vibration in the tracks before you can actually see it coming. "Does anyone know a piano player? Anyone at all? I've called every music teacher and piano student I can find. Nobody's available on this short notice." The other staff members looked at each other, shrugging and shaking their heads. Someone suggested calling the local music store to see if they knew anyone. Someone else wondered if any of the customers might play. Maya stood frozen. Her hands were trembling, so she shoved them in her apron pockets. Her heart was doing that thing where it felt too big for her chest, where each beat seemed too loud, too obvious. She could walk away, say nothing, let Tom figure it out, play recorded music and disappoint some donors, but ultimately life would go on. The cafe wouldn't collapse. The world wouldn't end, but that piano in the corner. That piano she'd walked past every single day for 3 years, pretending it didn't exist, pretending she didn't see it. That piano that had been calling to her silently, patiently, like it knew something she'd been too scared to admit. "I can play." The words came out quieter than she intended, so quiet that at first nobody heard her. "I said I can play." Louder this time. Everyone turned to look at her. Tom's expression went from stressed to confused. Jessica's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "You play piano?" Tom said it slowly, like he was testing whether the words made sense together. "Since when?" "A while." "I can do it." "For the fundraiser." Tom looked at her like she'd just announced she could fly, like she was a stranger wearing Maya's uniform and saying things that Maya would never say. "Maya, these are important people. Hospital board members. Potential major donors. The press might be there." He wasn't trying to be mean. He was trying to be realistic, trying to manage expectations. But every word felt like a small knife. "Are you sure you can handle something like that?" No, she wasn't sure. She hadn't performed for anyone in years. The last time she'd played in front of an audience, she'd been 17, and that felt like a different lifetime. A different version of herself that she'd buried so deep she sometimes forgot she'd ever existed. But she heard herself say, "Yes, I can do it." Tom looked at his phone. At the clock on the wall, at Maya, and back to his phone. He was running out of options and time. Okay, if you're really sure. The event starts at noon. That gives you about an hour and a half. An hour and a half. 90 minutes, 5,400 seconds. However she counted it, it wasn't nearly enough time to prepare. Wasn't enough time to remember how to be the person who could do this. The rest of the morning blurred together. Maya went through the motions of her job on autopilot. Took orders, delivered food, smiled at customers. But inside, her mind was racing. What would she play? Would her fingers remember? What if she froze up? What if she'd overestimated herself so badly that she'd embarrass Tom, embarrass the cafe, embarrass herself in front of people who mattered? Jessica kept staring at her like she'd grown a second head. I didn't know you played piano. Like, at all. Why didn't you ever say anything? Maya didn't have a good answer for that. It just never came up. But there's literally a piano here. Right there. You walk past it every day. I know. So why didn't you ever just, I don't know, play something? Because playing would have meant admitting that part of her life still existed. Because playing would have meant facing everything she'd lost and given up. Because it was easier to pretend she was just a waitress, nothing more, than to acknowledge she'd once been someone with talent and dreams and a future that looked nothing like this. I don't know, Maya said finally. I guess I just didn't think about it. Another lie. She thought about it every single day. At 11:30, the first guests started arriving. Tom had pushed tables together to create a bigger seating area. The piano had been moved slightly, repositioned so it would be more of a focal point. Someone had wiped the dust off and the keys looked almost white again instead of the yellowed ivory they'd become. Maya stood in the back room, staring at her reflection in the small mirror they kept near the employee lockers. She looked exactly the same as she did every day. Same face, same uniform, same person, except her eyes looked different. Scared, yes, but also something else, something that had been asleep for a long time now flickering back to life against her will. Tom stuck his head in. You okay? They're almost all here. Maybe 5 more minutes? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Maya, listen. If you really can't do this, it's okay. I shouldn't have put this pressure on you. We'll figure something out. But they wouldn't figure something out. Not in 5 minutes. And Maya had already made the choice. Had already said the words out loud. There was no taking them back now. I'm okay, she managed. I can do it. Tom gave her an uncertain smile and disappeared back into the dining area. Maya walked out slowly, weaving between tables where well-dressed people sat chatting and sipping mimosas. She recognized a few faces from the morning news. Local business owners. People who mattered in ways she didn't. The piano bench was cold when she sat down. She adjusted it slightly, buying herself a few extra seconds. Her hands were shaking. Actually shaking, like she had hypothermia or had drunk way too much coffee. She looked at the keys. 88 of them, black and white, patient and waiting. How many times had she dreamed about this? About playing again? About people listening, about mattering in the way she used to matter? And how many times had she convinced herself that dream was dead? That she'd made her choice and had to live with it? The dining room was getting quiet. People were noticing her sitting there, were waiting for something to happen. Tom stood near the kitchen entrance, his expression somewhere between hopeful and terrified. Maya took a breath. Then another one, and then, before she could talk herself out of it, before fear could win, she placed her fingers on the keys and started to play. Maya Chen wiped down the same table for the 3rd time that morning. Not because it was dirty, but because standing still made her feel useless. The breakfast rush at Rosewood Cafe had ended 20 minutes ago, and now the place sat in that awkward quiet between shifts. A few customers lingered over their laptops, nursing cold coffee they'd forgotten about an hour ago.